Good morning. Do we have sound?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Great. Thank
Good
you. Just
morning,
testing
everyone.
the sound.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear? Everybody sound okay? Just raise your hand or just type hello in the chat so we can know that the audio is working.
Well, I can hear you very well.
Okay, okay, great. Good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Olufeko, the chairman for the Creative Sector
Corporate
Group.
entity in today's fast-paced and ever-changing environment, being part of a good network of business professionals and thought leaders is all you need to take your business to the next level. At the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, we guarantee the promotion of trade, sound business ethic, and public policy advocacy that will help your business succeed. Founded in 1888 and with over 2,500 corporate members, we offer the best networking platform for business and profitability. Come talk to us today on how to become a member of the foremost Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa. For more information, please visit our corporate headquarters at Commerce House, 1 Idowu Taylor Street, Victoria Island, Lagos. Or visit our website on www.lagoschamber.com to learn more. LCCI, giving your business a voice.
Okay. Thanks for that video. Good morning, everybody. We're just waiting for one of the panelists to join, to dial in, and she's dialing in from the West Coast in the United States. So let's just give a few minutes. But please, in the group chat or the chat, just type in your names. You can introduce yourself, and it will be starting in a little bit.
Hello. Good morning over here.
Hi, good morning, Uduak.
Yeah. Hello, Ajay. Are we doing faceless or with? Okay, there we go.
Okay, so we have all the panelists on board now. We also have a representative of Madam President. The president of the chamber could not make it, so Mr. Gbenga Ismail is going to be representing her. We also have Mrs. Funmi Iyayi, who is an executive with LCCI. She would be able to introduce herself and how she wants to be addressed moving forward. We also have Ms. Lamide Akintobi. She's a reporter. She's one of the panelists here. She's dialing in from, I don't know if you're in Lagos or if you're in Seattle right now, but you would let us know. Then we also have my assistant, Ms. Binkpe. She's been instrumental putting this panel together. And let's see here, who else? Did I miss anybody? So I would just go ahead and get this started before handing over to Mr. Ismail. How do you want to do this? Do you want to just go ahead and take your section now, or do you want me to go ahead and introduce the panelists to the attendees?
I think it's better to introduce the agenda and objective of this event, introduce the panelists, then I'll go into the speech after that, so everybody knows why we are here and who we are before I go into the speech.
Okay, thank you for that.
I think that's fine.
All the attendees, I see you. I see your hands. Thank you for joining us this early. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce the panelists, as I mentioned, and I'll let them do a short brief of why they're here. But the overview of why we're here is we understand that the creative sector is one of the most untapped sectors in the Republic of Nigeria. And we're now coming to a point where understanding legal structures for the media professional down to the little artisan or anybody who has an idea anybody who has an idea, we're getting to the point where talking to professionals and hearing professionals in the legal space can add value to your own SME, a small business, or sole proprietorship. So this is what we are having today in this discussion. I encourage all the attendees over the course of this session today to write their questions down, and the panelists will try to respond at the end of the session. So Uduak, Mr. Iyayi, and Lamide Akintobi, I'll let you just give a very brief introduction, your background, and how you want to be addressed moving forward. Starting with Ms. Uduak, then Mrs. Iyayi, and then Ms. Akintobi. Thank you very much.
Good morning over here from California. It's about 3:08 a.m., but this particular seminar webinar is so important. So we are up early to be a part of this. So thank you to everyone that is present. My name is Uduak Odouk. I go by Miss Uduak for short. I'm a fashion and entertainment lawyer based here in California. I've been practicing law for 20 years. And my particular focus of why I'm here is because it's a very important discussion to have. I've represented clients across the entire creative industry spectrum, both locally here in the US and across the African continent as well. And in addition, I've been a part of trailblazing the whole discussion around legal structures for the creative industry. Some may be aware of my platform to that respect, which is African Music Law, taking on some of the latest issues that intersect with pop culture. And I'm here to discuss that framework and also, of course, answer any questions that you may have. Again, happy to be here. The final thing I should probably just add is I've been involved for quite a while with Chamber of Commerce's here locally, and I know their power and their importance, particularly in the legal community. So I look forward to tying that into as part of my discussion. Again, happy to be here. Thank you. I'll pass it over to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Funmi Iyayi, and it's fine to just call me Funmi Iyayi. So I work with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center. Until recently, I was the CEO of the center up until last month, and now I am no longer CEO. I'm on the board in charge of the secretariat, but then I have other responsibilities outside of the center. So I guess I'll be the odd man out here in the sense that everyone else here would have some history or expertise in the creative industry. I am the service provider who's offering dispute resolution services for those businesses that recognize the need to be proactive as you go into your creative business. So I mean, I think I did touch on this at the beginning. You know, as someone who's a player in the creative industry, you have your talent is all inside of you. But then once you begin to transition into an enterprise, a business, there's always a need for you to appreciate the legal aspects of the transactions that you go into. I know Uduak is going to be speaking a lot on contracting, and I'll be speaking a lot on how to be proactive when it comes to resolving disputes. Most businessmen don't think about disputes at all. The excitement is all about the deal. But then unfortunately, once there is a contract, you must, it's like a sandwich, the bread comes with the butter, whatever it is you put in, you must have yourself prepared for what happens if a dispute arises. And that's pretty much the service that we provide at the Arbitration Center. And I'll be speaking to you about the options that you may want to consider as you go into contracting as an enterprise or a player in the creative industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Funmi. Lamide, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lamide, and it's fine to address me as Lamide. I am a broadcast journalist, TV producer for features. I have been in the media industry now, working for about 15 years or so, 15, 16 years in Nigeria for the most part. I am currently working at CNN as a features producer and have worked as a news anchor and reporter for Channels TV. I've worked at TVC News. I've done a few things here and there. Here today, I'm actually really very interested in hearing what Ms. Uduak and Funmi have to say, and also would like to sort of talk about some of the observations and experiences that I've had in terms of being within the media industry and dealing with contracts and legal issues and things like that. I'm also very happy to be here in the sense that I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have about entering into the media space and what kind of pitfalls may occur if one isn't careful, because as one who's been in the industry, I think experiencing and observing a lot of those pitfalls is what I would be best placed to discuss and to talk about and to answer questions. I did express earlier that I unfortunately won't be able to be here for the whole of the session, so I will be keeping an eye on any sort of questions directed to me for the next about hour and a half, and then I'm going to unfortunately have to drop off because I have another call. But I'm happy to be here and so happy to be in wonderful company with all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lamide. So we don't have a digital round of applause for the panelists, but thank you for the brief introductions. Before I bring back in the Vice President, I am going to just reintroduce myself. My name is Olufeko. I am the chairman of the creative sector. It was inaugurated, this group was inaugurated about, I'd say like 2 years ago. And despite COVID and all the topsy-turvy of the economy, this group is one of the most important groups for the chamber and Nigeria. So without further ado, I'm just going to reintroduce Mr. Gbenga Ismail, who is the Vice President of the Chamber, and he's representing the President. So please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all the panelists as well. My name is Gbenga Ismail, Vice President, as has been said. I'm also Chairman of the Public Affairs and Advocacy Committee of the Chambers. Today, I'm representing the President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mrs. Toki Mabogunje, and I will be reading her speech, which has been prepared for this event. So Mr. Olufeko, Chairman, Creative Entertainment Group, our panelist, Mrs. Funmi Iyayi, Ms. Odouk, and Ms. Lamide Akintobi, officers and members of council here present, and members of the Creative and Entertainment Group. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to welcome you all to this webinar organized by the Creative and Entertainment Group of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The theme of this webinar, understanding the importance of legal structures in the creative and entertainment sector, brings into focus the role and importance of legal framework in the development of the creative and entertainment industry. This event seeks to facilitate discussion among players and stakeholders in the sector, as well as accentuate useful and relevant information to the economic optimization of the sector. The creative and entertainment industry is a vibrant sector in Nigeria and has advanced influence in music, media, film, and literacy across Africa and the world. The contribution of the sector to national output foreign capital inflow, income, and employment has increased significantly in the recent years. Though the contribution to the gross domestic product is infinitesimal and currently at 0.3%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, it is the second largest employer of labor after the agricultural sector in Nigeria. Jobberman, in his recent report titled Creative Sector Skills Gap Report 2021, stated that more than 4 million people are employed by the sector based on aggregated data from various sources. Furthermore, the sector's contribution to foreign capital inflow is estimated to reach $10 billion by year 2023 from $4.46 billion in 2018. In spite of the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and the lockdown measures introduced by the government across the world, which brought revenue of the entertainment industry to its lowest ebb, the speedy bounce back to the pre-pandemic level in Nigeria amidst restriction on physical gathering buttresses the resilience of the sector to shocks and reaffirms that there are potentials for expansion. The population growth occurring simultaneously with urban revolution going on in many African countries implies enhanced disposable income that will be expended on services consumption, including entertainment. Many young people are migrating to urban areas across Africa to seek opportunities for employment and self-enterprise. This demographic shift is meaningfully advancing consumption patterns as young people are becoming more and more shaped by globalization and growing in affluence. Moreover, the operationalization of the ACTA provides access to wider market for creative and entertainment products originating from Nigeria. On the backdrop of the strong fundamentals, the current momentum and positive outlook enabled by advancement and access to technology, it is therefore imperative for all players in the sector to understand and familiarize themselves with the laws, policy, and guidelines relatable to the sector. At the moment, there is no law specifically enacted to govern the creative and entertainment sector. Nevertheless, the following laws governing intellectual property in Nigeria generally form the legal framework of the creative and entertainment industry, since apparently all the activities in the industry are intellectual property related. And I read as follows these laws. The number 1, Copyrights Act Cap C28 LFN 2004, the Trademarks Act Cap T13 LFN 2004, Patents and Design Act Cap P2 LFN 2004, Companies and Allied Matters Act Cap C20 LFN 2004, Companies Income Tax Act Cap C21 LFN 2004, Personal Income Tax Act Cap P8 LFN 2004, Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. In addition to the aforementioned laws, the federal government created Entertainment and Creative Services Department out of the Department of Culture in 2017 for coordination and effective implementation of policy in the sector. Distinguished participants, it is important for all players to understand this legal instrument and be able to apply them to contractual agreements, intellectual property management, and other critical aspects. This will not only reduce misgivings and eliminate exploitation perpetuated by ignorance, but it will also empower the capacity of operators and players to conduct their activities without breaching any laws. This event has been carefully put together to create awareness about the legal structures and deepen conversation on the potentials of the creative and entertainment sector for economic optimization. We have lined up eminent speakers, subject experts, and practitioners in the industry who will share various perspectives and information on the theme. I hereby encourage all our guests and participants to listen carefully to the discussions in order to get the maximum benefits from the webinar. May I use this opportunity to express our profound appreciation to all our renowned speakers for accepting our invitation and agreeing to participate in this important event. I wish to congratulate the chairman and all members of the Creative and Entertainment Group for successfully organizing this auspicious event. On behalf of the Council and the entire membership of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I thank you all for honoring our invitation and thank you for your time. Mrs. Toki Mabogunje, President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much. Okay. We can now proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ismail. I appreciate the note and the word from Madam President. And we're just going to jump right into it. I know everyone has a packed morning, but I'm going to start off with. I was going to have the media professional we have in the house, but we can start off with Funmi Iyayi, just talking about the general work you do. You're on ground here in Nigeria, Lagos with me. What you've seen in the last 6 to 8 months when it comes to mediation, arbitration, and just what you've been exposed to in the media industry. And then we'll move to Ms. Lamide or Ms. Uduak, depending on how that conversation goes. So please go ahead and reintroduce yourself and just go ahead and I'll just try to keep with time. Please go ahead.
All right, so hello again, everyone. It's Funmi Iyayi, and I work at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center. It's actually a dispute resolution center that's set up by the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but then we're a very independent body, and we provide dispute resolution solutions to businesses, small businesses, big businesses, and anything across the spectrum of claims. We're able to find a method for resolving or managing disputes that's suitable for the particular transaction. Now, what is dispute resolution? I mean, it's just as the phrase implies. It's the manner in which you resolve disputes. In particular, for us, our focus is on commercial disputes. So it's a center that's focused on providing dispute resolution services for commercial transactions. Now, as the state provides courts, right? And everyone has access to the courts. So that is, an avenue or a platform that has been made available by government for everyone to access if you have a dispute which you require resolution. So for instance, you're involved in a contract, maybe you're, I don't know, a playwright or something, and somebody engages you to write a script for something, and then for some reason you don't get paid. You can just go to court, engage a lawyer, and if it's a small claim, you don't even need to engage a lawyer. You could just go to court and file an originating summons, and you can commence your proceedings in court. But then many times businessmen and women realize that the time it takes to have their disputes resolved in state courts is not sort of detrimental to the progress of their business. One is the time, 2 is the costs, 3 is the manner in which it's resolved, maybe because of the skill or experience or expertise of the judge, and then 4 is also the exposure. 5 is the fact that once you go into courts, there's almost no hope of continuing a business relationship with the other party once you go into court. Court is almost like, once you enter there, we're fighting and we cannot possibly relate in whatever business terms that we had before. And then there's also the confidentiality issue. So I'm giving a background as to why there is a need for the kind of services that we provide. One can access the courts. Everyone here can access the courts if you've started your own small business, you're a publisher, you're a musician, whatever it is that you do, you're an architect, because since I started speaking to Ade, I've been reading a lot about what the creative industry is, and I see that it's a wide spectrum. Whatever it is, you can access the courts. Many times, one would find that it's not the most suitable place to have your dispute resolved. Not all the time. Sometimes it's the best place, but many times you find that it's not, right? And I've just given reasons why one would see that, perhaps I shouldn't be going to this place. Time, cost, expertise of the adjudicator, of the judge, confidentiality. Court is a public place. If I have a suit against Mr. Olufeko, for instance, any one of you here, I could call any name or on the attendees, you can simply just go to court and apply to go through the records of that dispute, because it's a public record. But then when you have the kind of services that we provide, it's very confidential. There's also time. Those of us who are familiar with the news in Lagos would know that the courts in Nigeria have been on strike now for 2 months. 2 months, you have no access to courts, and you could just be there sitting down, and whatever it is your claim is can have gone so bad that even when the courts still open, it would almost be pointless going to court. So that's why, businessmen and women came together and said, you know what, we need to create a platform that we can control, where we can have our disputes resolved. And that's how alternative dispute resolution came about. That's what LACIAC. LACIAC is an acronym for the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center. That's what we do, alternative dispute resolution service. So you don't want to go to court. You need to have this dispute resolved. What else can we do? That's what centers like LACIAC, and outside of LACIAC, there are many other institutions like us globally that provide this service, that allow businesswomen and women access dispute resolution options without being bogged by whatever state courts that they would normally have gone to. What are the ADRO mechanisms? What is it all about? What happens when you don't go to courts and you come to a center like LACIAC? One is we provide a service that is called mediation. I assume a lot of you will be familiar with this, but in case you're not, I'll just give a brief definition of this. Mediation is a process by which parties resolve their dispute through what I would call a structured negotiation process. Now, what happens in mediation is the parties are in control even of the outcome. They are the ones who determine what the settlement will be. There is a mediator who sits as an umpire, but he doesn't say to the parties, "Oh, this is what I have now decided. Olufeko should pay Funmi, Iyayi, XYZ." No. He basically stands as, like I said, an umpire, just aiding the parties to see what the critical issues of the dispute are, so that they can then both take away whatever else is not critical to the transaction and then have the main matters resolved. And what happens in mediation is that the parties are the ones who say, okay, yes, I was supposed to pay Mr. Olufeko $100,000, whatever. And however, Mr. Olufeko realizes that he requires my skill. Maybe I sing or something, and he knows, okay, he needs me for a show. Okay, you know what? Don't pay me the 100,000 naira. Just pay 50,000 naira for commit to coming to perform on these 3 days. And if that's fine with me, we sign off. That's a settlement. So when you think mediation, you think win-win. Both parties live happy for the most part, right? And it's a process that is not very expensive. You preserve the relationship that you had prior to the dispute arising. So you're able to go back to whatever transaction it is that you were working on. Of course, there's confidentiality, like I said. Then there's the issue of time. We all know for businessmen and women, time is money, right? You can control the time. You can literally say to the mediator that I want this matter. The parties can say to the mediator, we want this matter resolved in 2 months. Because the way it works is really both disputing parties literally engage the mediators. They enter into a contract and say, we will pay this person as a mediator to listen and help resolve this dispute. So that's how mediation works. And that's one dispute resolution method that we provide, right? And in Nigeria, for those of us who are doing business in Nigeria, there are mediation laws under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act that also guide mediation processes. Now, the other method I want to talk about is arbitration. That's a bit more technical than mediation, and it's more akin to what happens in courts, right? But then the difference is the fact that it's a private system. So, when I talked about issues like confidentiality, when you're arbitrating, no one would ever know except you allow it published what the nature of your dispute is, or that you're even involved in a dispute, right? Then you also have the arbitrator or the panel of arbitrators who will be skilled in the subject matter of the dispute. You can all appreciate that if you have someone like, for instance, Ms. Uduak, who she's a lawyer, but then she's also being in media. So if you have someone like her sitting as an arbitrator in a dispute that has to do with maybe publishing rights of a music, I'm sure you would appreciate that she would do much better in appreciating what the nature of the dispute is as opposed to a judge in the courts, because she understands those transactions because she's worked in that space. That's what happens in arbitration. The parties, for the most part, would get an arbitrator who is a subject matter expert. Doesn't necessarily have to be a lawyer, right? It's just you're trained in arbitration, so understanding dispute resolution and the arbitration process, and that's all it takes. So that's another service I provide, but it's a much more technical process than mediation, because in arbitration, it's just as litigious as litigation, I must say. If anyone has had any court experience where you have your lawyer, you file your pleadings, you bring witnesses, all that would happen in an arbitration, except, parties may choose to dispense with it, but in an average arbitration, all those things happen. You have hearings, all those things happen, but it's private. You can control the time. You have an expert arbitrator, it's confidential. And when you put all these things together, it actually equates to a cheaper process than you would have in court, because the arbitrator would never go on strike. He's paid by you. You literally tell him how you want the process to go. So that never happens. So that's arbitration. So those are the two key dispute resolution methods that I would say relate to you. But then outside of this, there's a combination of all these things. Parties you could decide that, okay, I don't want to arbitrate. It's way too technical. It will cost too much money. All right, so let's try negotiation. Let's try and see if we can have this matter resolved through negotiation. I believe Uduak is going to be talking about the nature of contracts that businesses such as the creative space would enter, but then it's always important, I touched on this when I was introducing myself, to have in your contract, one is important to enter into contracts, not hello, oh yes, sure, I can do what day? Okay, fine, this is my account number, and then they credit it and you just tell your manager, so we'll be in this place. No matter how small, whether it's one text message and another response, that would serve as a contract, but you must have something documented that is your contract. And then going further, beyond that, you should have in that thing you've documented, you should have something that says what will happen if a dispute arises. I know it's almost like a God forbid situation where we come from, we'll never, why should I be thinking about that? But in reality, it's just the way business works. If you're not doing it as a pro bono cause and it's business, you must think of disputes. You just must think of disputes. It's a smart thing to do. And then once you start thinking of disputes, then you think, okay, which options do I want? Do you want to go to court? I wouldn't say you should never explore that, because sometimes you just don't have the money to pay a mediator and all that, and you just think, I'll go to court. Well, even if it takes 6 months, let me stay there. It's been provided for you by government. It's your right. It may work. It could work in many instances. And I also advise parties not to totally close their doors to that. But then, if you're not going to court and you want to try ADR, your lawyer will tell you, you can't just say, oh, we would, in that contract that you've agreed, you won't just say, if a dispute arises, we will explore alternative dispute resolution. No, that's almost like not saying anything. You must specify, right, the specific ADR method that you choose. Because if you don't, and a dispute arises, this is what will happen. The other man who doesn't want to go into your dispute resolution, your agreed dispute resolution process, will say, oh, the contract is a bit unclear. Are we doing mediation? Are we doing arbitration? Are we doing negotiation? I don't understand it. So then he'll go to the court and the court will say, it's very true. It's not clear what people are agreed on. So you end up in court again. Be specific, be clear. We would explore negotiation. And if we are not able to resolve it by negotiation, then, the parties are free to go to court. Or we will explore negotiation for 2 months by the CEO of our company and any executive of the other company. They would try to have the matter resolved at that top executive level by negotiation for 2 months. If that doesn't resolve the dispute, they would try mediation. You can actually cascade it that way. They will try mediation. You can state the period. If that doesn't work, then arbitration. Nothing you can do. It's your contract. Contract is almost like a wish list, as long as it's not illegal. You can put it all there, and you will then be bound by those terms, such that if something happens, you begin to explore those processes, one after the other, and by the time you get to the bottom, more often than not, you have your dispute resolved, but it must be stated in your contract. Negotiation is very basic. It is just the two of you going back and forth, discussing and seeing how can we have this matter resolved. So it's not mediation. It's even it's a less structured dispute resolution process, because it would involve most times one executive member of each of the boards, both companies. And they just sit down together and have series of discussions with no one else with them. But they both know what is on the line, which is, we have money on the line, we have this deal. Do we want to move forward or not? Or are we going to waste our time, just posing, excuse my use of that language? Or you could try mediation. You say that in your contract. I've already said what mediation is. A structured process. It's almost like negotiation, but you employ the services of a mediator who is skilled and who sort of supports you so that you don't waste your time discussing, but when I called, you didn't pick. When I called, that's immaterial. It is, what was the information? Is it something that at the end of the day is material to the dispute? Can it be overlooked? The mediator helps you go through this process. And typically, in Lagos, for instance, in LACIAC, a mediation process is honestly not expensive. And as we speak now, LACIAC is actually running a free mediation clinic for small businesses, which I would encourage you guys to take advantage of if you require, a dispute resolution service for what right now in your business. What LACIAC is offering now is a process where SMEs can access free mediation with expert mediators who have who support our program by giving us some of their time, and they would take on cases at no cost to support parties in having their dispute resolved. And if unfortunately they're not able to settle, then the agreement or the clinic mandates that you would then explore an arbitration under the LACIAC rules. But like I said, it's something that is free, and if anyone is interested in that process, just contact me. I will put in my details at the bottom and I'll introduce you to the secretariat and how. And this is actually, it's on now, but it's something that runs throughout the year. So there's a process, there's a clinic going on now, and I think there'll be another one towards the end of Q3 and another one towards the end of Q4. We're in June now, sorry. So there's one now, and then there'll be another one towards the end of Q4. So it's something that you should just be at the back of your mind that you can take advantage of at any time. Now, so that's as far as there are many other dispute resolution ADR methods, but I've only touched on 3 because I think that these 3 are sort of ones that you'll be able to take advantage of. The more technical ones that maybe would be focused on like a construction type dispute adjudication, for instance, which may not totally relate to disputes arising from the creative industry. But I think what I want everyone to just take away from here is the need to specifically mention in that contract, having agreed, I'm sure we've all agreed that there's a need for you to document, contract, whatever transaction it is that you're going to, let it be stated somewhere right? And then also agree on how you will resolve a dispute if it arises. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It doesn't mean that you're bringing bad luck or whatever. It is the business thing to do. Once you get into the business space, that's the business language. You discuss the likelihood of a dispute and what to do when, if I wouldn't say when, but if that arises. And the LACIAC, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center, is a platform that, and it's not open to just LCCI members, if anyone is wondering. It's open to businesses anywhere, and we're able to provide our services even on a cross-border basis. So if you're even contracting with parties in South Africa, in Turkey, I don't know how, LACIAC is able to, and for some reason there is a dispute, even if it's China in Asia, where you're able to use the LACIAC platform to have this dispute resolved, because we're an international center and we can appoint mediators or arbitrators that are non-Nigerians who are in remote locations to help provide this dispute resolution service. The other thing I just want to add is, with the COVID and all, LACIAC has come up with a platform, and I think it's first of its kind on the continent, where you can have your ADR process, your arbitration, your mediation, and negotiation, just as we're having it now on Zoom. But we have a bespoke platform for our dispute resolution processes, where you can file your process, not just the hearing, but everything. You can literally just go on the LACIAC website, click on dispute, and upload your claim. Right, and then a member of the Secretariat will contact you, and the whole process can be done online. You don't have to put anything in an envelope, send it to an address. It's all done online, and it's done, very fast, especially if you opt for mediation. So I'll encourage you to explore that as well. Like I said, I'm available to take on any questions regarding our services, regarding ADR, as the webinar goes on. Have I covered what my mandate?
Yes. Yes, you have. I'll probably call on you later on down the line, but thank you very much. I would like to encourage the attendees to please ask and write your questions down. And the questions should be structured around scenarios of what the likelihoods, like what Funmi was saying, discuss contracts, dissolutions, and general things. Uduak, I'm going to call on you now. Uduak, based out in the West Coast, but she's very, very huge into media contracts, agreements. She's covered huge disputes between, she's written articles on the fallout between this media company, that media company, this artist, P Square, Banky W. I try not to call names, but I have to call names of things that are in the public domain. And that's intellectual capital for us to know that, okay, you know what, these things are being discussed. We don't want a situation where, like Funmi says, you get a credit alert and you say, oh yeah, the thing don't finish with that. Then later on down the line, you realize that you didn't have any clauses or there's no written down agreement. So with Uduak, Uduak, I would like you to reintroduce yourself, or also talk about areas you've seen based on data that'd be beneficial to the attendees, so that it would encourage them to ask more questions. And I'm going to bring Lamide in. Please go ahead.
Sure. Again, good morning to everyone. I'm here in California. It's 3:44 a.m. Happy to be here with you all. This topic is very important. I think the way I want to start the conversation is to take it from Miss Ajayi, right? Or is it Ajayi or?
Iyayi.
Iyayi, okay, Miss Iyayi, where she covered, and for several reasons, and then I'll go into the framework of what I want to talk about so that everyone has a clear understanding of what we'll be talking about today. So I've actually been an arbitrator, so I can speak from experience on that. In addition, I'm currently the vice president for California Lawyers for the Arts. It's an organization in California that certifies arbitrators and mediators, and I'm happy to liaison with your organization in Lagos and with both organizations here. The final thing is, for the past 8.5 years, I've been a volunteer pro tem judge. So think of your Judge Judy or your local new small claims judges I think George Funmi, Asalu, and another one out there. So that's what I do on a volunteer basis. So I'm constantly interacting with mediators as well. And then, of course, as I said, also very familiar with arbitration. The way I like to explain mediation to our people is simple. We're simply talking about our elders. Culturally, we all know that if we have a dispute, culturally, the way we resolve those disputes is we go to our elders, they pull everybody together, they have the conversation, what happened here, and they give their own suggestions on how the solution ought to be brokered. And that's sort of a simplistic way. Yes, the Western folks have now packaged it and called it mediation and put a bunch of rules, but it doesn't change what we've been doing for decades or centuries, if you will, culturally. So think of mediation that way. And then arbitration, a quasi-judicial, a little more formal. And indeed, all of what we've been talking, what the previous presenters just laid out is very, very important for all the issues that come with mediation. Unique to the United States when it comes to the creative arts is we actually have mediation and arbitration for the creative arts. Happy to liaison with the chamber, Lagos Chamber in Lagos for purposes of figuring out how that model ought to be constructed. The second thing that we have unique to the US, and this is just recent, is we now have a small claims court dealing with copyright related issues for the creative arts. So very progressive, very aggressive on how we do that. And then we also have with the US Patent Trademark Office, a volunteer, quasi-volunteer group of lawyers that handle patents for those who are not able to be able to afford it. Having said that, let's step back now and look at the big picture on why, based on the topic, it's very, very important to have legal structures around the creative industry. First things first, I always like to start with the story of identity. And a case study for that is to look at the amazing story of Amazing Grace. We're all familiar with the melody. So the melody part, not the lyrics, right? And then we're also familiar with the lyrics. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. It's a global song. Everyone knows it. Well, there are interesting stories behind it, but one dominant story is that the melody, right, actually comes from the Efik people, which happens to be the region where my heritage is from. So it comes from the Efik people, and John Newton, during the whole colonial times in Nigeria, had visited the region, heard the local people singing the melody and their lyrics to the song. Ultimately, left the continent, went back to, where he came from, the British to the UK, and during his conversion process, ultimately, because he converted from being that slave master and slave trader, in the conversion process, now decided to pen his own English lyrics to our folklore melody. And at some point we had one of our Nollywood producers who did, and film director or filmmaker who did a whole story on it, Amazing Grace. And that's openly available if you want to check it out, whether Netflix, etc. So what's the point behind that story? The point is that if we, for example, at the time that melody was created for our folklore people had protected it, we would be raking in billions right now. And that money would be going to not only our GDP, our infrastructure and everything else, but certainly help us out in terms of just who we are as a people, our identity, our continent, and of course, wealth. So identity matters. It's so important whether you're structuring a deal on the Nigerian end or you're doing cross-border contractual relationships. The identity, if you are a creative on the continent or a business owner, and you are doing deals across Europe, North America, et cetera, and you have no clear sense of what you're trying to accomplish and how it factors into the Nigerian identity, it's problematic because you're gonna make bad deals and those bad deals ultimately pass on. And then we have a really, really broken system where we're worrying about, investments coming in, but our people not really getting much out of those investments in terms of foreign direct investments or other situations where it's not really balanced. So identity matters. The second reason why we create legal structures is monetization. I love, love, love the creative arts for several reasons, but let me underscore one important reason. when we are, as you know, citizens of Nigeria, born in Nigeria, men and women overall are not necessarily treated very well, right? Equally, that is. So for men generally, and it depends too, even for men, if you're the firstborn, you know that the legacy of your father most likely will pass on to you. Forget about the rest of your siblings, they're out of luck. You, that firstborn child, gets to have land. If you are a woman, forget about it. In most parts of Nigeria, it's not even an option for you. When we're talking about intellectual property, we're talking about creations of the mind. But tangible property, real property, land, buildings, etc., those tangible property generally do not pass on to women. But the creative and intellectual property is yours, and it can travel globally, doesn't matter where, and it's not limited by gender, it's not limited by being a firstborn or anything. So while that is all great, you still have a problem, right? Because if that intellectual property, so Lamide, for example, creates content in Nigeria for the online world, but then it travels globally. However, she's not taking the proper legal structure to protect herself. That content is making money for everybody else, but she doesn't get to see any of that. And that's what is happening with that creatives. You're having our music globally now, but a lot of our artists are not collecting those royalties, don't even know where to go. And there are many people standing in front saying they represent the artist when they don't even know the artists that have any kind of relationships. So those monies need to be collected. We're just recently talking about the Ugo Monye situation with Coming to America and the design reel that he created and the alleged infringement on a copyright, trademark, and patent design that he had registered his trademark locally, or he at least registered his trademark locally. But if he didn't do that, can you imagine even more of the egregiousness that can happen from that? So it's very important also, for my second point is very important that not only do you create this particular intellectual property, but you're able to monetize it. And that's why you need legal structures around that. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of creative works or intellectual property work, you always need lawyers in the space, because it's all about the law. And then the final reason why, I sort of alluded to it, would be intergenerational wealth. We have a moral obligation to our children and our children to create intergenerational wealth that passes on from one group to another. And the way we've been doing it is unacceptable. Actually, if you think about the old times, in terms of culturally, great-grandparents and forefathers actually did that. They passed on the land. Yes, it might not have been evenly distributed, but they were cognizant of that. In this day and age, we're not as cognizant of that. We're not creating that intergenerational wealth. And our people are really suffering across all spectrums. Beyond the division of the rich and the poor, you just see in daily life how much we're suffering. And so having legal structures around that also help with intergenerational wealth. That's the overview. Now we can get into the more detailed discussions on the types of intellectual property, and then the company law. I think the opening statement and speech that was given indicated the different types of laws. I'm happy to delve into that, talk about several case studies, and also talk about the parameters that the company law provides, the parameters under Nigerian law that trademark, copyright, patents, et cetera, industrial design provides in protecting all of this work. But I'll stop for right now, pass it on to Ade, and then Ade, if you want to break down those questions after Lamide, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Uduak. So I see questions already coming in by Mr. Philip OK and others. Just write the questions down. The panelists would have an opportunity to respond to the questions. Now I'm gonna go to Ms. Akintobi, Ms. Lamide, as she likes to be called. Her background is pretty interesting. She would reintroduce herself, but she has worked in Lagos here. She's worked with a bunch of media houses. She's also worked with, she's done interviews with the sitting president, the previous administration, the current administration. She's done work, she understands a little bit of going into contracts from somebody emerging into CNN and these type of things. She's worked in Calabar. She's worked around, so she's seen the from a media perspective. She's seen how to go into contracts. So I would leave the floor open. She can freestyle it, but it's going to be in alignment to legal structures and the creative space. So Lamide, please go ahead, unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ade. Thank you for the glowing introduction. And thank you to Ms. Uduak and Funmi as well, because you guys left a good floor for me to enter into. I'd like to say that for both, picking up on both of the things that you said, I just kept nodding because I felt like it's so important for us to acknowledge and talk about the fact that it is so important to enter into legal agreements, one, actually have a structure, because I think more often than not, we loosey-goose it, as they say, like we go into these things with a handshake, or we go into these things with, especially when you're younger, because I know that I made choices when I was younger thinking, oh, this is the opportunity, I'm just gonna go and get it, and wasn't advised to have a lawyer look at it or have somebody else look at it who has a sort of broader perspective. And so that, I think, one of the first things that I would say for anybody going into any sort of media agreement, commercial agreement, but I mean, as a media person, I'll talk about it, be you a journalist, a creative content creator, producer, whatever it is that you may be, the first thing that is extremely important is to have an agreement. I would even go further than Mrs. Iyayi saying, even if a text documentation, I would even say, even if it's a one-pager, you need to invest in yourself, in hiring or having somebody, a lawyer, even if it's a one-off, to get you a structure and put down a one-pager agreement for anything that you're entering into, be it as a freelance journalist, which I have been, a producer, which I am and have been over time, be you a creator of fashion items, of a consultant, a creative consultant going into a channel or a business to develop digital content or develop any sort of broadcast content for them. You must have on your own side at least a one-page document that says, these are the terms of the services. These are the services I am providing. This is what I will not provide. This is what will happen if you need an extension on this. This is the deadline. Are we doing this on a per project basis? Are we doing this on an hourly basis? Is it a monthly retainer? Those kinds of things. So for anybody who's entering, young or old, young or not so young, who's entering into an agreement, I would say, make sure you at least give yourself that knowledge, right? That's you have to engage the services of a lawyer to write an agreement that is binding, that you can at least both parties will sign. It is then different if you go into a big, like you go into a bank or you go into, a corporate organization that's bigger than you, that has a legal department, and say, oh, no, we want a proper contract. That's fine. But you make sure that you protect yourself. And when you collect this, contract, always know that you have a say. Never be afraid to say, thank you for this. I'm going to have my lawyer look at it. If you don't have a lawyer per se, or you can't afford a lawyer, you need to, this is where I get a bit, because it's difficult, right? So some people do not have the, the money for a lawyer, but I would say here, you need to find somebody in your network who can look at this. You may have a barter service situation, but always have a legal person, somebody with legal experience, look into these things, look into every single clause. And I never say yes to a contract off bat straight away. Always have someone look at it, always push back. And this is the thing also, even for negotiations for money, always make sure there's at least a back and forth, right? So go for it and say, okay, look at it clause by clause. What don't you think is quite kosher? What do you not agree with? All off the bat, what do you think should be tweaked? And with every single piece of information, also do your research. It is extremely important to say, okay, what are my counterparts or my peers in this industry at the same level as I am? What are they doing? And maybe what are the things that are their concerns? So maybe you're producing content for a shipping company that wants to create some sort of, I don't know, TV or web show, right? that might not be what a peer of yours is doing in like exactly, but a peer of yours might have done some digital content for a bank, may have done some digital content for another business entirely. So have a conversation and say, okay, what are some of the things that you came up against? It is so important not only to think of yourself as a business as an island, but as a creative group, right? Because what is good for one tends to bleed out to the other. What happens in one organization with a creative or with the creative that came before is likely to happen when you go into that same organization or into a similar organization. So things like, what are we all getting paid at this level? Things like, what are the expectations at this level? Things like, what are the yeses and the nos that I need to say at this point to make sure that, you know, my IP is protected, or that we have an agreement on who is creating what, who takes responsibility for what are the deliverables? And then when we both walk away from this contract, what do I have the right to do with this thing? What do I not have the right to do? So in all these discussions in creating and in you know, especially creating media, which is, I suppose, where my career sits in, it is important to have conversations, to have the network and have the understanding and the willpower, I think, and strength, confidence to have that sort of pushback and say, look, hey, thank you for this. I'm going to discuss this with my lawyer. Even if you don't have a lawyer, always say, I will discuss this with my lawyer. I need my lawyer to look at it, and then come back and say, these are the things I'm not comfortable with. These are the things that I think need to be adjusted. And then now that we've learned, which is something that I did not know, but we'll be doing going forward, Mrs. Iyayi, thank you so much for talking about how, you know, putting into the contract with detail what the steps, you know, need to be, because I know that I have signed so many contracts where I look at the dispute part and it always says court. So I mean, I've never thought to myself, oh, I need to put in here something about arbitration or what, you know, or whatever the case may be. So that's something that I will definitely be doing going forward as well. So we need to arm ourselves with the information. We need to research, right? Everything that we're going into. We need to discuss with, you know, peers and counterparts and our network, outside our network, to see what is the going rate? What are the going challenges? What are the concerns? What are the things that I need to red flag or pink flag to make sure that, A, this maybe something that happened to another person doesn't happen to me, or something that happens to me, you know, this can stop here so that the next person doesn't have to deal with that. And for another thing that I think we need to talk about is the enforcement of things. A lot of times we sign contracts, I've signed contracts and created things for people, and when I leave, I can't even say, oh, I did that, because I sort of signed away, you know, my right to do that. One of the things, this is not the case for this particular thing I'm about to talk about, but I used to work at Ebony Live TV, and one of the top rated shows on the channel is called The Spot. Now, I co-created that show, co-wrote the show, co-produced the show, and presented the show. And I can say that everywhere, and I can say that anywhere, because I'm not hampered from saying that. But I have been in other situations where I created something, but I literally can't even say I did it, because I essentially I didn't have an agreement, or didn't, you know, I essentially signed away my right to say, oh, this is my work, you know. And you, as a creative, you should never put yourself in that position. You should never be in a position where you cannot at least have a record of that this was your work, even if you cannot take it somewhere else because you're working under a larger umbrella or corporation. The point is that your work you should have a track record of your work. So that's something that I think that, you know, everyone going into media or any sort of media content creation, digital creation, should keep in mind and make sure that it's not a hidden clause in there, because I think a lot of times too, we are going up against the big guys, and it can be a bit difficult to push back. It can be a little bit difficult to sort of stand on your own feet and say, oh, hey, this is not okay, because we're afraid of losing the opportunity. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about was collaborations. You know, and I think that it's incredibly important for us to not only think of collaborations within the industry, but also outside. We need to collaborate with, you know, whoever is in our network of legal professionals. Why I say this is important to talk to somebody like, you know, Ms. Uduak, for example, because then you get a sense of what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things I need to watch out for? Also, it's also a two-way street, in as much as, you know, somebody like Ms. Uduak or any other lawyer could advise you on what to look out for in a contract or in a situation. There's also the other side of the story, in talking about, hey, what are the concerns that creatives have, and how can we, maybe see how we can enhance legal understanding, legal approaches to things, because that's also really, really important. As the world continues to evolve, as the media landscape continues to evolve, as things like digital and NFTs and, all these new technologies and wonderful things keep coming into being, it needs to be a constant conversation. We need to make sure that we are upping and upskilling ourselves and upping our own game, because as the world continues to evolve, we need to make sure that we don't push ourselves out because we don't have the information and because we're not having the conversations that we need to have within legal structures and also outside, to make sure that even as much as the creative is concerned, the legal needs to be also, put in. New things are evolving every day, and we should, in order to build intergenerational wealth and to make ourselves comfortable while we're here, we need to make sure that we're doing the right things to set ourselves up with the right structures so that we can earn the money that we should be earning rightly, have the rights that we should, that we don't push ourselves out of that, and also create something that we can leave to our family and, our children and our children's children, as Ms. Uduak mentioned. I think I'd like to pause there because I'm sure that, there's some things that we could discuss based on what I've said. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Lamide. Very, very insightful, and I like the way you were able to tap into what Ms. Iyayi said, and also Ms. Uduak. Just to bring it a little bit, as using some case studies or just some scenarios. You have ideas that you have that you need to, I guess, patent. You have laws in Nigeria for industrial designs. There are many things that are not being tapped into. Within the Chamber of Commerce, there's sessions going on right now which help individuals get funding. And when you get funding for an SME, you can have some of that allocated funds that goes to a lawyer who can then look through your contracts, who would then also provide ideas of how you can protect yourself, especially going into entertainment or anything like that. So this is where Ms. Uduak and Ms. Iyayi can come and, they provide these services. These are paid for services. They'll be able to go into which areas they can. And also they would also provide the information if you guys want to explore larger, much wide range of services. Another thing I wanted to talk about is taxes. There are tax laws that apply. A lot of people just do cash and carry, but there'll be at some point where you would actually grow big and you may want to start having like a studio. And sometimes those studios could be where you have a sign, where you have to deal with LACIAC, just regulators, people who are making sure that business owners are following and paying the fees. The creative, we all know that oil and the finance industry are booming, but for how long? The creative industry is reaching a critical mass where intellectual property and all these things are going to be important. So it's very important to have the right foundations. So I'll just stop there, and there are a few questions from the floor, but before I allow those questions to be answered, Funmi, are you still there? Okay, I think she should be there, but she stepped away. Okay. Okay, all right. There are some questions from the floor, but I wanted to know if there's anything that you wanted to address that Ms. Lamide spoke about before we go to the questions.
Not so much. I mean, I think Lamide's presentation resonates strongly with everyone because she's actually in their shoes. She's either worked ahead of them or working alongside them, so they would really be able to connect. And I like the fact that, she said, one, the language is, I need to speak to my lawyer. I want to run this by my lawyer, whether you have a lawyer or not. And then even though then she said, which is really factual here, of course, when you're very young, you obviously don't have a lawyer. But then she said, for people within your network, there's a guy in my church, some boy who has dreads, and he walked up to me one day and said, "Hello, ma'am, please, I hear you're a lawyer. Can you help me?" And I thought, wow, Because he needs a lawyer, and I see him posting different things. I don't know who he is. Maybe in 10 years he will be one great person singing. But he knew he needed a lawyer, and he just asked me, oh, he wants to send me some stuff, and he was fire or something. And of course, that just I was like, shout, I would help as best as I can. So there's always someone you know. And I think that when people see that, so this is for artists, for instance, or I don't know, depending whatever it is you're doing, they see that you're working hard. I don't know that many people will say, oh, for me to go through this contract, I have, you have to pay me. The other point she made is you could even trade it off. There's always something you can offer for, the other stuff. If you sing, you could say, oh, on your mom's 70th, I would come and, so sorry, there are all sorts of things that one can do. So I really like those two things. One, always, that language is always be, I need to run it by my lawyer. Don't think, oh, where would I find a lawyer or whatever. Once you start doing business, that should be the kind of language that you have. So, and yeah.
Ade, would it be helpful if I talk about the legal framework before you take questions, or no?
Yes, it
copyright
would.
and
Yes,
trademarks.
Yeah, it would. I wanted to just touch on one scenario here in Nigeria.
Okay, go ahead.
This is based off of what Lamide said. It's a global community expanding, and we also have to upgrade the way we engage, rules of engagement. In Nigeria specifically, there's a lot of situations where you do business with family, and it gets real murky and funny when you start saying, you cool, and you have to sign something, and then they report you to the elders. You understand? So that's an area I feel that needs to be addressed. It's a dark area that has to be addressed. This prevents nepotism. If we don't talk about nepotism, we're being hypocrites. But I just wanted to mention that so that Uduak and Funmi can address that. So please go ahead and discuss the framework. Uduak, the floor is yours.
Sure. Let me just talk first about the legal framework and then some of the key things you should look for in entertainment contracts as a whole. Hopefully that's helpful, and then any questions. So let me start off with using Lamide, since she's here and she's worked in the capacity of a producer, among other things, and we'll go the filmmaker or producer route. So if you are a filmmaker and you decide, and you're going through that filmmaking value chain, and you decide that you want to create content that ultimately, let's say you want to write a script that ultimately then will be produced, and you have a deal with a network like Ebony Life, and ultimately have it executed where it's exhibited and people can see it, whether through Netflix or any other way. There's several things at the starting point you need to think about. First things first is your screenwriter agreement, right? It's actually the story that you're going to create. Who's the one creating the story? Are you the one that's going to be exclusively writing the story, or are you going to collaborate with someone else? So Lamide told us, or Miss Lamide told us, that she's created stories and she's scripted them, done all the work, but there are some companies she actually can't be able to proudly say, beat her chest and say, I have those rights. So the first things first would have been that writer agreement in her capacity as an employee under Nigerian copyright law. There's some nuances that says once the work is created within the capacity of employee-employer, the employer owns that work. However, there's certain caveats that still gives the right to the creator. And we sort of saw it with the whole recent case involving Ebony Live TV, actually. So there's some nuance where there's still further rights that media company will need to get from the creator. Also, even though Lamide does not believe that she can actually go back and claim credit, she may be able to, because under Nigerian law and US law and UK law, there's what's called attribution rights. So while you might be able to sell off the other set of rights and say you own it, it's very, very important to understand that your attribution rights, for the most part, stays with you. So you can still claim and say, here's my portfolio of work and here's what I did. So going back to that contract to see what that's all about. So what am I talking about when I'm saying the filmmaker route, you need to have an agreement, specifically a joint collaborator agreement, a screenwriter agreement. This is all for the story that you're creating. Scriptwriter agreement. I'm talking about the law of copyright. And the law of copyright works this way. It specifically says when you create content or when you create works as is used, both on the Nigerian copyright law and the US copyright law, and similar language in the UK. And if it is fixed in a concrete form, so this video recording now, once it's fixed and becomes an MP4, that work belongs to the author who created it, right? So the work belongs to the author. So your writers, for example, in Lamide's case, your musicians, your other filmmakers across this value chain, your business owner who's creating online content for their website. Once that's done, there are about, in the US, 6 exclusive bundle of rights, very similar on the Nigerian end, that you are entitled to as the creator. And exclusive means you have a monopoly. No one can take those rights from you. It's for you, with certain exceptions. Certain exceptions would be, for example, what's called fair use under the US law, and under Nigerian law called fair dealing. And the way you see that play out is news reporting, for example. News reporting, criticism of the work, for example, gets an exception to the requirement that because you have a monopoly, so because Ms. Lamide has a monopoly, you have to go to her to ask consent to use her work. That's how that works on the copyright law. So what are those rights? She has the exclusive right to be able to reproduce the work, right? So she can take the work she created and make several copies. If she's a musician, she can take that work she created and have it on all kinds of CDs distributed worldwide. You also have a distribution right. I was just talking about it being distributed. So anytime you take work you create and then put it online, for example, Facebook, any social media platform, distribution is happening because you're allowing everybody in the world to see you. If you put it on YouTube, if you ultimately get into a deal with, for example, Ebony Life or any other TV network to distribute the work, that's a distribution right that you have, and then you are licensing, you're giving someone else the permission, or you can assign it, you're selling it outright to that other third party to be able to monetize and help you make money off it. Also, under the copyrights that you have is a derivative right. So that simply means you have a right to allow others to create work from your existing work. So you want to do a remix of music, or someone else wants to do a remix of music, or you want to do a remix of music. You have a right to do your remix and to grant permission to other people to do that. You have a right to display the work. To the great Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, that book was written and distributed globally, was first published in the UK. One of the first versions in the UK. Well, he went all over the world displaying his work, talking about his work. So you have display right, exhibition right as part of that display, among other things. So that's copyright. Generally, you see copyright play out in the film industry and also in the music industry. For the most part, that's how it plays out. And the music track is subdivided into 2 areas. If you're a musician, you have two rights that are constantly at play. There is the person who writes the lyrics, which is technically a literary right under copyright law for Nigeria, the US, the UK, and I reference the UK because Nigeria really borrows a lot from the UK law. So the person who writes the lyrics has a literary rights. And then in addition, the person who creates the beat also has a copyright. Usually we refer to that as a master's. On the composer side, the person who's composing or writing the lyrics, we call that the publishing rights. And there's a whole spectrum that comes with the monetization and sale of that right that can get complex on the publishing side of things. And on the recording side, that's where you see the recording artist. So let's say Davido did not necessarily write a song, but then he recorded it. If he's signed to Sony Music, for example, that recording right, generally he turns over to Sony because they're footing the bill and everything else related to him being able to sing that song. And then they own the master right. Usually they negotiate it out in perpetuity, or if he has some bargaining power, he can reserve more rights. So that's how that track goes. On the music composer side or lyric side, there are a whole set of rights that allow that musician, anytime the work is played, displayed, distributed, to get royalties from that. In Nigeria, that's not as well developed. That's the main area we're now dealing with, especially post-COVID. So that's that track. Then the second legal right, so I've talked about copyright. The second major legal right to talk about is trademarks. And trademarks, you see a lot of businesses get into it, but in addition, the creative industry that really, really uses a lot of that is the fashion industry, certainly here in the US. In Nigeria, the fashion industry doesn't just talk only about trademark, they subdivide it into the industrial design part, which actually falls under patent law, which I'll talk later. But trademark is basically your word, your slogan, your symbol that helps distinguish a source of good from another. If it's a service, then it's called a service mark. So for example, I have African music law. African music law is a trademark that is distinguished as a source of good from another brand out there. And the whole idea behind trademark is you've worked so hard. So you started a business, you called it, you have a trade name, let's say Lamide Fashions, or make it more unique, Lamide Unique Fashion Design, right? Let's just make it that unique. And then you've put in a lot of your marketing and promotional dollars to build it out. Let's even use some of our local designers. Let's say LACIAC. It's a unique name. You've put in a lot of marketing promotions. You've taken, shown work all over the world, etc. And then someone in Nigeria decides that they too want to now become LACIAC, but instead of spelling Sago SAGOE, they might spell it SAGAE, right? Very similar. So the law says you can't come and profit off all that hard work. That's not right. Plus, you have created what's called likelihood of confusion, which is the hallmark of trademark law. So you are confusing the public, and we are going to protect the public from this confusion, and we're not going to allow you to rip off of someone else's hard work. So that's what trademark is all about, and established for that. And the way you ensure that you protect that trademark is obviously to register it, because it gives you so many different rights that go with it. There are certain things related to Nigerian law on the international front that limits the abilities of our creators, because the government has not necessarily acted on it, to allow our creators to benefit from this on an international scale specific to trademark. Copyright, we're doing much better with the Berne Convention treaties that we're signed on to, and that allows for reciprocity. So if, for example, going back to the Lamide scenario, if she creates content specific to the filmmaking route, that content is copyright protected, and she doesn't even need to register it on the Nigerian law, and she doesn't need to register it on the US law, because we have a relationship with Nigeria that allows us to recognize that work. So if someone infringed on her copyright, she can call me here in the US and say, someone infringed on my copyright, and now it's being over showcased and exhibited in the US and making money. Can you please send a cease and desist letter, the first mark of litigation, to say, stop it? And if they don't, and she has the finances that can push for that, she can then say to me, can you please help go into court and file a case against them? She doesn't even need to be here locally for me to do that and make that happen and ensure that that infringement stops. On the trademark side, Nigeria doesn't have that relationship where we can jump in and do that. So Lamide would have to specifically contact me to trademark her name here in the US. So the final area that's talked about a lot is patent law. And patent law deals with inventions of the mind. And it also enjoys legal protection for inventions of the mind. The way you see that really play out is computer software related. You do see that also in the fashion industry. So when you're talking about, sunglasses, frames, even heels, of shoes, and particular type of designs relating to shoes, those kinds of things enjoy patent protection. so long as it's an invention. And again, just like copyright and trademark, you, the creator, have an exclusive right to stop everybody else. Now, what good is it if you just take your right and hang on to yourself? Obviously makes no sense, because you're not making much money off of it and you're not sharing this gift with the world. So generally, most creators like to monetize it. And you can monetize again through licensing, giving limited permission for someone to use it. The rights stay with you. The rights stay with you in perpetuity. They're just using it for, making money off it. And sometimes you as the licensor are getting a proceed out of that. Many times you are, depending on the deal structure. And then, you can assign it, sell it outright. A lot of the filmmaking, you see the script writer sell it outright. You'll see on the music side, both particularly for the master recording side of things, the recording side of the business, the recording artists sell it outright. And then let's talk about finally, there's trade secret. And let me just keep that very short and sweet. Trade secret is rooted in contract law. There's a little bit of intellectual property that comes in, but that's more on the common law side of things. And basically, as a business, if you have a recipe, let's say Coca-Cola, for example, has a recipe on how Coca-Cola tastes, you don't want the world to know. You need to keep it a trade secret, protect it, get your non-disclosure agreements with your employees, have that process really protected to make it a trade secret. The moment it becomes well known to the public or even to your employees where it's not really protected that well, then it's no longer a trade secret. So having said all of that, in terms of the framework of the legal issues we're constantly dealing with, copyright, trademark, patents, trade secret, but more the first three. Then the key issues are, what are the key terms? So I'll just talk about just general terms, maybe 5 or less of those terms, and then we can get into details with everybody else that might have questions. So overall, the first thing is to identify the parties who's going into agreement for what, right? And then I always say the most important thing in any contract is to know how it's going to end. In the entertainment industry, we say, be careful who you get in bed with. A lot of people are so quick to want to form relationships, and it's in such a great honeymoon stage. Ade raised a great point in the Nigerian context. Now you have to even worry about the status and elder and respecting your elder factor. To get into relationships, but we never are concerned about how it terminates. And how it terminates is really where all the problem, all the wahala actually happens. Because you need to say when it terminates, if it ever should terminate, what are the triggers that will make it terminate? Is it going to be through a breach of contract, or is it not going to be through a breach of contract? And if it terminates, what exactly should happen? And then of course that takes you into, we should have a dispute resolution, mediation, arbitration, or we're going to go straight to court. So the parties, the termination, the exclusivity or non-exclusivity of the deal. A lot of creators sometimes may not want to be exclusive, but the people they're doing business with that have the money, the investors, want exclusive deals because they want to be able to monetize and make a lot of money off of it. And they feel like, okay, well, if you come sign, for example, to record label and you're only there for 1 year and I've invested, let's say 1 million, 10 million naira into you, I don't get a return on my investment. So I want an exclusive deal with you. So exclusivity is very important. The dates are definitely also very, very important in terms of when does it start, when does it end, duration of the deal, among other things that goes into that. Let me stop there right now. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer them. Back to you, Ade.
All right, thank you for that wide and also detailed overview. There are a few questions. I'm going to run through the questions, but in the interim, I would like for you guys to have your contact information ready for individuals who may want to reach out for paid services. I also want to use this opportunity to encourage anybody who's sitting on the fence, vacillating if the chamber is worth being a member of. I can strongly tell you that I've reaped benefits inside the creative sector and outside the creative sector. It is one of the oldest live chambers in West Africa from the 1800s, before colonization. But I'm going to invite Mr. Ismail, who has a question. Mr. Ismail, are you there? I see your hand up.
Yeah, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, yes, definitely. Let me add to your invitation to those sitting on the fence to come and be a part of the chambers. What the chamber does is create awareness about what is going on in specific different sector groups, and also does a lot of advocacy on your behalf on issues that either are limiting, restricting growth of your business area. So this webinar is one of those instances whereby we share ideas to understand exactly what is happening and what we need to do, and come together to now advance a position. So please do join the chambers, get in touch with one of us, and we can bring you in. Now to my question, I want to ask, in areas of image rights or creative infringement, how do you go about assessing value? Because if that has happened, then how does the infringed party or the person that feels I mean, not the word. How do you then assess the value of loss or damage or claim? Is there a method that is none? And I know there's intellectual property law that helps on that, but what is the general look on that? Maybe this is to Funmi or Uduak. Can you hear me?
Ms. Funmi, do you want to start, given that I just finished speaking and then I can? Otherwise, I'm happy to jump in.
Oh no, absolutely, you, Uduak. I mean, how to assess damages?
I was actually going to call on Funmi.
Yeah, I think it's more.
Uduak.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, in evaluating what the damages are, there's several ways to do it. And yes, the provisions of most of the statute relating to infringement, copyright infringement, trademark talk about it. And it's very similar on the Nigerian end. So there's several things. Number one, you should already have a working idea what the value of your IP, intellectual property, is. And one way you can assess that is to look at your income stream for that IP to begin with, and look at the market and see what the valuation is in general for that particular type of IP. So let's say you created a film, and in general, let's say that's going to be about $30 million in terms of general sales. If marketed and promoted, that would come in, and someone infringed on it. That sort of gives you a working idea of it, for you to say that's evaluation of that intellectual property. There are folks who specialize in intellectual property valuation. So if you don't trust your confidence in that, you can also seek those services. But independent of you having just an overall working sense and looking at your revenue, your profit relating to your marketing and promotion of that, another tool that's available to you for damages purposes are number one, injunction that the court provides that will automatically say, okay, you've already been putting work out there. I don't know if everyone remembered the Omoni Oboli case of, I forget what the name of the film was now, but it was, there was someone else that came and said that she allegedly infringed on their copyright. She ultimately won that matter. But one of the first things that happened is the plaintiff in that case sought an injunction to stop that. And then what's typical is what's called an accountant. So an accounting will also help you with that, because an accounting is basically a requirement for the alleged infringer or the infringer to show all of the profits that have been made from that. And that way you can assess how much, obviously, that's going to be coming to you, and of course pay you that proceeds because they're infringing on your work as well. So you have that injunction, you have the accounting part, and then you also have the statutory damage, right? So the statutory damage under US law, there's a similar thing. I just don't know what the amount is specific for Nigeria, but the statutory damage, for example, on a copyright would be, it can range, but go all the way to 150,000 US dollars per violation. So if you are violating and the court finds that, especially where it's a willful violation, then you got to pay up that $150,000 per violation. And then of course the attorney fees as well that you may be subject to pay as a result of the violation. So those are the general overview of how damages are determined and how you're able to then get compensation for it. But at the very start, when you create your intellectual property, you should already be putting value on it and have a clear idea of how much it will be in the marketplace by looking at your competitors, by looking at your income stream if you're already monetizing it, among other factors. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that question. Mr. Ismail, I hope that addressed what you're curious about.
Yes, definitely. It could, yeah.
Okay, so I have another question from the floor. This is from, go ahead for me, please.
Yeah, this is me. It's just the follow-up. I mean, I'm just.
Yes, go ahead.
Uduak. So when when these damages are being assessed, these are like indirect damages, right? Not like your actual, this is what I actually lost, or this is what, so there's the actual, and then there's the, what I would have got had this transaction comments. I don't know, did you address those two?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actual damages, right? So the actual profit coming in from as a result of actual loss that you suffered as a result of the infringement, if you can prove that and should be able to prove that. And then there is the foreseeable profit that might come from that. Now, courts get very, very, very leery sometimes of getting to those future damages of, let's say, potential copyright infringement is already out there, and then oh, well, I would have made $1 billion in the next 5 years from this. Well, we don't know that for certain. So you generally have to really put a structure around that. But yes, actual is, you got to show those receipts of what the loss you're claiming you suffered. And part of how you show that is all that accounting that comes into play to be able to help you establish that, in addition to prospective loss that may happen. But again, with the caveat that the courts are not as open to, oh yeah, I'm going to make $1 billion if that infringement actually, or in future happens. But we'll consider that if you can really support it with your facts and receipts, if you will, or evidence. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I have a question from the floor from, I don't know if it's a Mr. or Mrs. Shukarat Amosa. And this question goes to Ms. Iyayi or Ms. Uduak. Is there a legal way to register and protect a trade secret?
Yeah. So I think I would like Uduak also take the Uduak. I don't know if
sure. So there is no registration of a trade secret. It's what happens internally in your company, and it's your obligation to keep it a trade secret. So which is why I said that once it's exposed, then it's no longer a trade secret. So the way companies try to do that is to have their employees get sign off on a non-disclosure agreement that agrees that they're not going to reveal the processes or the secrets, especially those trusted 1, 2, 3, if it's a small company, or maybe a handful of trusted employees that might know that recipe for food recipe, for example, Coca-Cola recipe, or whatever that process is. But no, there's no, you don't register a trade secret. It's just something that you have internally with your company and you protect through non-disclosure agreements.
All right. Okay. Another question from Mr. Philip OK from the floor. Is there a limited time to bring a matter before LACIAC for either mediation or arbitration? That's for Ms. Iyayi.
So when you talk about limited time, I mean, we do have limitation laws in Nigeria, so there's that. So just by law, assuming it's a contract that arose in Nigeria and the Nigerian laws apply to you, you do have your limited, depending on what your claim is, there are limitation laws that determine the amount of time you have to commence an action. Whether it's court or arbitration, it's the same thing. So if it's a simple contract with a claim arising from a contract, for instance, I think 6 years or something. So there's that. Now, your contract itself may actually state if you do not commence an arbitration within so and so period, you forfeit the right to. That can actually also be in your contract. So there is the law, and then you could also restrict yourself by contract. But once the way limitation laws work is once you then commence your action, whether it's court or it's in an ADR forum like an arbitration, time stops. You know, time does not continue to run while your matter is in court or before an arbitrator. But there is, it's not so much of a LACIAC imposed time. There is a law that requires you to make haste in pursuing a claim that you have arising from a contract, and that's a law that applies to you whether you have chosen arbitration or you have not chosen arbitration. So I hope that's clear. It's not so much of LACIAC. Under the LACIAC rules, no, there's nothing that says you should institute an arbitration within XYZ period from the commencement of the action. But the law, under the law, there is a time frame provided by statute that within which you must commence your action if it's from a contract.
All right. Okay. I hope that answered Mr. Okay's question. The next question, which has been answered, but I want Lamide to just respond so that anybody who doesn't have access to the window can hear her before she makes her final comments. As a media person, we dish out a lot of content per time. How do we all have this IP protected? So Lamide, the floor is yours.
Yes, so as I mentioned, I think that Uduak can probably add to this, but I was saying that it's one of the things where you do have to have an agreement with whoever it is that you're entering into that contract with or have an agreement with. So if you are an employee of ABC and in your contract, it states any content that is thought up or provided by you within this period of time belongs to ABC, then it belongs to ABC, no matter how much content you're churning out. So you as a content creator or provider will have to think of, are you creating content individually that you will then flesh out and bring to a company and say, hey, this is my content, I have rights over it. I think Uduak can say if I'm right or wrong, license it to you to use for this period of time and you can pay me this, or do I assign the rights to you so that even when I'm done, you've paid me $5 million or whatever you want to do with it, you do. So this is, I think, one of the conversations you would have to have if you're starting to work with a TV channel or a film studio or whatever. It's like the content that I'm going to create while I'm here or in this period of time, who does it belong to? Do I have the distribution rights? Do I have the complete IP ownership, or is this a partnership, et cetera, et cetera? So in as much as you're creating plenty of content per time, it depends on what you've signed and what you've agreed with the person that you're creating the content for.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you want
go ahead? No, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. So the legal terminology to look out for are two things. Number one, just in your employment agreement, it's going to ask for that intellectual property assignment of rights. So you'll see under intellectual property, there's usually a clause in most employment agreements that handle that. Even some of the ones I've seen from Nigeria that will say that assignment of right. They don't even need to say that, frankly speaking, because again, under Nigerian law, generally, with the exception of certain specific nuance in the law, once you create work in the context of an employee-employer, the employer owns it. Once you start getting into media side, it's very, very nuanced. I think we saw Tubore recent case study as that was. And then the other concept I want you all to be familiar with is work for hire, which again, Lamide sort of covered it. But the legal term basically is, if I'm an independent contractor, so let's use Ms. Lamide, for example, independent contractor, and she created a show for Ebony Life. And she was not an employee, so that's what makes her an independent contractor. They just called her, we really love what you're doing, we want to commission you, we want to specifically ask you to create this for us. In that agreement, it needs to say that it's work for hire, and that it belongs to Ebony Life once she creates it. And so that's what you look for, work for hire. In the music context, you'll see that happen with music producers, you'll see that happen with artists, you even see that happen with music composers as well. So work for hire, which is an independent contractor creating work for an employer, a company, right? And that company is then taking on that work as their own permanently. So you're signing those rights. And then the employer-employee agreement, which essentially says the employer owns it with certain caveats. Thank you.
Awesome. And Ade, I'm sorry, because you were saying before I go, and yes, and my time is sort of far spent. I literally have to hop off pretty soon, but there's a couple of things that Ade had mentioned earlier, and I wanted to touch on. He mentioned something about taxes, and I wanted to talk about something that Uduak also said in one of the things she said earlier. The phrase "in perpetuity," I would like, when you see it, just stop and pause. As a creative, when you see that phrase, stop and focus on it. Make sure you have someone look at it. And I'm sure that, and I would ask, even when I'm gone, that Uduak please speak on how to handle that as a creative, how to deal with that phrase in perpetuity. And I wanted to mention, a lot of times as creatives, we're very, oh, this is this great idea, I'm developing it, my music, my fashion, my whatever. But please also remember that it is a business. I don't do business as Lamide. I have a business account and a business name. So when I am hiring out my services as a creative consultant or as a media coach or whatever it is I'm doing it under my business name, which is Something Special Media Productions, right? So that is so I pay taxes with that. I have to pay my taxes. I literally just have to file annual returns, in Nigeria. So as a business, as a creative entrepreneur, make sure you're registered as a business, make sure you're paying your taxes on time, make sure you're doing the right things that you need to do. In as much as you have wonderful ideas and they're creative, you also need to not neglect the business side of it. Have an accountant that, you don't have to file taxes monthly anymore, which is something that changed, I think, last year. I used to have to file them monthly, but you must have an accountant who you can at least speak to when you're starting this out to say, okay, I've registered my business name. What are the things I need to do when you're invoicing? Your taxes must be in there because you have to pay your tax. So make sure you do all those things as a creative, content entrepreneur or creative entrepreneur as a whole. And I think I do have to hop off, unfortunately. I'm so sorry that I have to go, but I did leave my email in the chat, info@lamidelive.com. So if anybody has any questions pertaining to this particular topic, you can feel free to send me an email. So, but thank you very much for the platform. Thank you, Ade, and thank you so much. It was so lovely to learn from you, Mrs. Iyayi, and of course from Uduak as well.
All right, thank you, Lamide.
Yeah, Lamide, it's a pleasure to be on the platform with you.
So moving on, the next question I have is from Lamide Akintobi. I'm not sure if he's still signed in. I'm going to. This question is to Ms. Uduak. You had touched on it, but it's intergenerational wealth, according to you. Are you implying that when one writer dies, his copyright would outlive him? Is this the succession? I'm not sure of this question. Is there a succession plan protecting children of the deceased writer? So that's Mr. Akintobi from Ogun State. So please go ahead.
Yes, so great question. And yes, intergenerational wealth, exactly what it implies that so for example, Sweet Mother, I don't go forget you, Prince Mbago, who wrote that song and it's been sold worldwide with millions of copies made, lots of money made, but he died very, very broke. And it took a while for his heirs to be able to collect something off it. And that's only strictly because the composition part of it and the song itself was not registered and enjoyed that copyright protection that it should have, even if it's not registered under Nigerian law, which is not necessarily a requirement. It wasn't signed with the right performance rights organization, so they could collect that money worldwide. So yes, under copyright, both Nigeria and the US copyright law and the UK as well, the duration for when a copyright lasts is the life of the life of the author plus, depending on Nigeria, it can range from 50 to 70 years. In the US, depending on the specific copyrighted work in Nigeria, it can range from 50 years to 70 years. In the US, we're talking life of the author plus 70 years. So after the author dies, plus another 70 years. And yes, those royalties should be passed on to the heirs. So that's what I mean by that intergenerational wealth that you can create, where your heirs continue to profit from that for generations to come.
All right, thank you very much. I think this question may have been answered by Ms. Iyayi. What arrangement are there to prevent disputes? And the second question from Amaka is it possible to bring a contract case that's already in court to the arbitration center? Something that's already existing.
The first one is how do you prevent disputes? So that's what we call dispute avoidance. And I would say the best way to prevent a dispute is by drafting a very thorough contract. So that's the first step. Consider all the possible aspects of your transaction and document it. That way, the likelihood of a dispute will be less. So that's the first way. Now, yes, so some businesses have a very strong dispute avoidance approach, and I would say that approach comes more to do with, when I said contracting, the other is the practice of constantly communicating and then looking back at the transaction. So if, for instance, in your transaction, you have a long-term contract, you're doing something maybe over 2 years, something, you should have a process where you are constantly checking in or reporting or meeting with your contracting party. That helps a lot with avoiding or managing disputes, because what you would have flagged as a dispute, one would already pick in your frequent meetings or your frequent communications. And at that stage, it's probably it's not yet a dispute in the sense that there's no disagreement. It's something that, one says, oh, if we continue along this line, you may be able to notice that, oh, this may happen. And I don't know if this makes sense to you, then that way you sort of retract your steps. If you have a long-term contract, I think a very smart dispute avoidance or dispute management practice outside of your contract is that frequent communication between the contracting parties. You're writing update letters or having update meetings, discussing the progress of the transaction. It does help with dispute avoidance. And I would say that, yes, dispute avoidance is something that a lot of businesses, small businesses, big businesses, are seeking to adopt more as a culture, where they just look for how to ensure that whatever conflicts that arises does not mature into a dispute and can sort of be sorted along the way, and a dispute will not arise. So one is able to set up practices that can prevent disputes, just like the ones I mentioned now. Your contract, your communication within the lifespan of the contract, it would help.
All right, thank you very much. I have.
Sorry, there was another question about whether you can, a case in court, a suit in court can transition into an arbitration or a center. Okay. So I'll say that the simple answer is yes, but it's entirely up to the parties. I may not have said this, but it's implied. All the AGL processes are by the agreement of both parties. There's none that is imposed on you. So the parties have to agree. So if you're already in court, right, meaning you didn't have a contract that stipulated that your dispute should be referred to arbitration, you're already in court, and then one party says, oh, this is a waste of time, let's go to arbitration or let's go to mediation. You can't compel that other person. You have to get that person to agree, because both parties need to agree for any ADR option. It is only the court that has the power to compel or mandate you to come before it. Once you step out of the court and you go to ADR, it is by contract, meaning you have already agreed. And that's why, we're stressing that the best time to pre-agree is at the beginning of your contract, where there are no conflicts. So nobody's thinking you're trying to, be smart. There are no issues. You just put it there. But once a conflict or the dispute arises and you start saying, well, let's go out of court and go, the other party obviously will be suspicious. So it's possible, yes, if you can get the other party to agree. But you can appreciate the difficulty once a dispute arises.
All right, thank you for that. I have one final question, and I'm going to we're going to round things up here. The participants, Ms. Akintobi, that just left her information in the chat window in the event that there's a partnership or collaboration idea that you have. Ms. Uduak as well has sent in the chat window information on how to get in touch with her and her firm. And Ms. Iyayi as well will be doing the same thing, but you can also go to the LACIAC website and inquire or attention to her, and the right protocols will be sent to her.
I think I've actually put it here. I said, hello, everyone. I can.
Oh, okay. I missed it.
About 12:42.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. The recording, the chamber, the creative sector is going to try to get the YouTube link sent to everybody who registered, so that if there's anything that you want to ask, it's probably, you can see it in the playback. The last question I have is from a Omawale Olatunde Agbeja. I apologize if that if I'm not pronouncing it right. But the question is, are there any peculiarities in setting up a creative company or a production company that we should be aware or look out for, please? And I'll direct that question to Uduak.
Sure, several things. Number one, I just want to make sure Lamide mentioned the perpetuity clause and wanted me to address that, and then I'll wrap up with that question that was just asked. So anytime you see in a contract that you are being requested as the creator of a work to give your creations to the third party that's requesting it, whether it's an investor, whether it's a producer, a TV network, whatever the case may be, there are two things you have to evaluate. Do you want to give this property away forever and ever and ever? Or do you want to keep part of it, give some of it, come back and keep the other part for yourself, or give a little bit away right now for some extended period of time and then come back and get those rights back? So perpetuity is generally a clause that has been used for so long in the entertainment industry, and that business model is now being disrupted, especially here in the US, because it's been said that it's, especially with the advancement of technology, that allows a creator to be able to create their work. For example, if you're a filmmaker, Laula D, for example, you can do a movie like Plan B, upload it on YouTube, and it gets so much traction and recognition without even doing much marketing and promotions, that can then bring you endorsement deals and sponsorship deals and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of evaluation around the equity, the fairness of that particular clause of it being in perpetuity. So I think it's something you have to evaluate for yourself. With your lawyer. I generally am not a fan of perpetuity clauses and do not generally advise my clients to get into perpetuity clauses unless it's for sure something they want to give forever and ever in perpetuity. So that's the answer to that. As to the question that's posed that I'm looking at here about peculiarities in the setup of particularly production companies, in the United States, it's done. Yes, there are uniqueness to that structure. I don't necessarily know how a lot of the local companies have been structuring their own production companies, although I presume it'll be something similar because it's all new territory for a lot of filmmakers. But in the US, generally what you want to do is you don't create a sole proprietorship, which is just you on your own having a business, because it doesn't really protect you from legal liabilities should your company, for whatever reason, incur liability. There are also no real tax benefits to having such a sole proprietor setup. In addition, you don't necessarily do a partnership because, again, there are no liability to shield you from any kind of lawsuits or other legal claims that may affect you. And when I talk about shield you, it's shield your assets, your home, your cars, other monetary value that you have. that can be up for grabs if you don't have protection. So generally what companies will do here, production companies will do, or producers, is to set up what's called an LLC, limited liability company. Nigeria has that on the company law as well. And they will set that up. And what happens with an LLC or a C Corp or corporation is it allows investors to take you seriously and want to infuse cash into your business and allow you then to really flourish. In addition, there's a uniqueness of how producers or companies generally will set up their structure, more so what's called a loan out corporation. So basically you set up the business, but then you hire yourself, especially if you're the producer or the actor, you hire yourself out to the company as an employee of the company to work for the company as well. So yes, those are the peculiarities of structure that's set up within our own system here in the States.
All right, thank you very much to my panelists and the organizers. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for making this platform available to the members and potential members. I will call on Mr. Gbenga Ismail if you want to say any closing words at all.
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, let me say a big thank you to the panelists. I'll start from Uduak, who's giving up her early morning to be here, and she's really impacted on all the guests here today. So I thank you very much, and hopefully we would hear more from you. And then to Mrs. Funmi Iyayi, representing the Arbitration Center. Thank you very much. But someone did ask a question to give the full meaning of the LACIAC. I'm not sure that was answered.
It's the Lagos Chamber of Commerce International Arbitration Center.
Thank you very much. So that's clear to everyone now. So thank you for being part of this. The chairman, I know you're going to give the final vote of thanks. So, but I'll just say well done from your fellow council people for putting this together, and let's have more for the creative sector group, because that is a sector that's growing and it's doing a lot for everyone, and we need to know more and understand more about how much business is going on there, and especially from the write-up that we the speech, where it is now the second largest employer base. And that's the data that's important to keep measuring. So thank you, everyone. Over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail. Once again, I extend my thanks to Ms. Odouk, Mrs. Funmi Iyayi, Ms. Lamide Akintobi, the brilliant questions that have come in. And just as Mr. Ismail said, there is a mandate to expand this group. When this group was inaugurated, it was creative, entertainment, and sports. But we cut the sports out so that we could focus on the creative and the entertainment. There are multiple streams of income that can be plugged into the current supply chain. The chamber keeps putting out white papers and sheets on how well the economy is, despite on all the insecurity, the chamber is respected. So I go back to saying that if you're sitting on the fence and trying to decide if you want to come into the chamber, I think now is the best time. Just like the stock market, you put your money in when things are down. So when it's going back up, you're right in the driver's seat. So once again, thank you for everyone who's dialed in. I know that it's during the week, and just want to say thank you very much. And to Mr. Henry, Bay, and all the others in the background, the IT, we will be doing another series following this after some internal deliberations. And please, in the playback, send your messages, any inquiries, business inquiries to Big Bay or the panelists. So thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all, and don't cut off sports. Sports really needs it. I mean, the NBA is now on the continent and so many, and they do a lot of arbitration in sports law. So it ties into your organization. So please consider keeping it very, very intact and expanding it.
I think it's more like there's a separate sector group for sports, isn't it?
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
Ade, is that correct?
Yeah, there is. There is.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
got
that's
it.
what it
Got
is.
it.
Yeah.
It's still very
Okay.
active. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, take care.
Excellent. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
As a corporate entity in today's fast-paced and ever-changing environment, being part of a good network of business professionals and thought leaders is all you need to take your business to the next level. At the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, we guarantee the promotion of trade, sound business ethic, and public policy advocacy that will help your business succeed. Founded in 1888 and with over 2,500 corporate members, we offer the best networking platform for business and profitability. Come talk to us today on how to become a member of the foremost Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Nigeria and Sub-Sahara Africa. For more information, please visit our corporate headquarters at Commerce House, 1 Idowu Taylor Street, Victoria Island, Lagos, or visit our website on www.lagoschamber.com to learn more. LCCI, giving your business a voice.